Welcome to They Not Like Us, the podcast that explores life in any way the journey takes us. What's the niche? There is no niche. Well, I guess we are the niche. We are conversation chameleons who follow the conversation wherever it may take us. Catch us live on Facebook and Twitch, or listen to the show on YouTube, Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
Hey, welcome to the show. Today I've got Kevin Palmieri. Is that how am I pronouncing it?
Palmieri. Yep, perfect.
Palmieri. I won't do the intro myself. I'll ask you to do that, Kevin, if you can. Just let people know a bit about yourself and what you're all about, really.
Yeah, I am somebody who loves helping other people. I think I've always liked that. I just never knew how I was going to deploy that in the world. And now I am the host of Next Level University, a global top 100 podcast with 1,808 episodes or something as of today. And I am a full-time podcaster. I get to podcast for a living now, which quite literally was a dream at one point that I never thought was going to happen. So that's me in a nutshell, I'd say.
That's brilliant, actually. How did you transition into podcasting? Was that something that you wanted to do, or was that just something that just came about because of the other stuff that you were doing?
Mostly massive pain and turmoil, unfortunately, is how I got there. I was somebody who I don't think anybody ever would have bet on me being any level of successful. I was raised by my mom and my grandmother. I didn't know my dad. I didn't go to college. I wasn't very smart. I didn't have a lot going for me. But I eventually got a job that required a lot of manual labor, but I made really good money doing it. Aaron, I assumed that if I make a lot of money, I'll feel really good about me, especially internally. This is going to fix all that stuff. I don't have to worry about anything. This is going to be fine. So then I went on and I made the most money I'd ever made in my life. And I realized that for most of my life, I just lived unconsciously, assuming that eventually everything would kind of just work itself out. And it never seemed to. And even though I made the most money I'd ever made, I was still the most miserable I'd ever been. And I realized that for most of my life, I lived unconsciously. The opposite of unconscious is hyperconscious. So in 2017, I started a podcast called the Hyperconscious Podcast. And I just want to have cool conversations with cool people. So it came from the disappointment of I just spent a year trying to fix all of my internal problems with external results. Let me talk about internal stuff with people and see if anything comes out of it.
I bet a lot came out of that, actually.
More than I bargained for.
Yeah, I think everybody's got their struggles. Even the people who deny it, everyone's got their struggles. And I think 90% of what we do is that internal battle with ourselves. Because when you get that right, everything seems to come together.
Well, it's hard because I think a lot of us are inspired or motivated by external results. And when you see, at least for me, when I saw external results and I saw people that were in really good shape or people that had attractive partners or people that had wealth, I couldn't fathom how they could be miserable internally. Because if I had all that, I think I'd be super happy. But I think it's really hard to see fulfillment. It's really hard to recognize fulfillment. And you see someone and it looks like they're struggling and it looks like maybe they're losing, but they're doing their purpose and they're really happy somehow, even though they're overwhelmed. I think it's really hard to recognize fulfillment. And it makes sense to me why people chase external, because very transparently, my life is the hardest it's ever been. I'm the most fulfilled I've ever been, and I have more quote unquote results, but I also have done a lot of internal work too that I didn't know I was going to have to do. So I understand why people see shiny stuff and assume that's the way.
Yeah, and it's easy, especially now with social media, and you see everybody posting only the best stuff and all this, that, and the other. And you might be struggling and working a job you don't like and doing all that kind of stuff. And it can really probably pile on that internal pressure, really, especially if you don't address it. So how did you address your, I don't want to say issues, but, stuff that bothered you, stuff that affected you, stuff that potentially held you back? How did you start addressing that?
I didn't do it fast enough, and I waited longer than I should have, and I ended up sitting on the edge of a bed contemplating suicide the next year. So things continued trending down, unfortunately. And I tried after that. I started from a place of self-awareness. I tried to figure out, okay, the reason we are where we are today is not just the behaviors of yesterday. It's the last year, the last 5 years, the last 10 years. I don't really know how I got to where I got to because I don't understand a lot of the stuff that's happened to me over my life. So I tried to gain self-awareness. I went to therapy. That was super helpful, even though I thought people were going to make fun of me or I was going to look like a coward or all of the stigma that comes with that type of stuff. I really went on a mission, for lack of better phrasing, to try to learn as much about myself as possible because I realized if I don't know anything about me, of course, I'm not going to be able to predict any results in my life. So it was really that. It was when I was around someone and I was comfortable, I would try to ask myself why. When I was around someone and I was triggered, I try to ask myself why. I try to ask myself why and dig and dig and dig and dig. And that really was the first step for me, as silly as it may sound. That was the thing that quite literally saved my life. I think self-awareness is the best thing in the world because I'm biased, but because it helped me more than almost anything else.
Yeah, I mean, you can't begin to put things into perspective and put things right if you don't understand who you are really and what you. And I think on some level, everybody goes through this. No matter no matter how fortunate you are in life, or how unfortunate you are, I think everybody goes through this process, and I think it takes us all longer than we want. I mean, it's taking me longer than I want, and I'm still trying to figure out exactly, who I am and just be authentic and real and be myself and just not. But I suppose it's difficult when we grow up and we go through life in this place where we're always worried about that external, worried about people's perception of us and, fitting in and fitting in, that's what it's like through school. You're trying to fit in all the way through school, and then you get into a new workplace and then you're trying to fit in there, and it just becomes, you spend your life trying to fit in and not spend your life exploring who you are and trying to find out the real you. And I think it's a shame because some people never find it.
Yeah. Well, I think it can be very scary to find the real you. Somebody asked me on a podcast recently, they said, do you think, and they were scared to ask this. And when they asked, I said, I think about this all the time. You're good. Please ask the question, whatever it is. They said, do you think any of your self-doubt, the issues that you've struggled with, because I might come across as somebody who's supremely confident. And if I am, it's not natural. And it's just because I'm on a podcast and I've done a lot of podcasts. I have a lot of self-doubt that I work through. And they said, do you think that's because your dad left when you were young? And I said, absolutely. Yes, for sure. And that had something to do with it. But I think what happened was when my dad left when I was young, that implanted, well, I'm not good enough. If I was good enough, my dad would have stayed around, even though I was a baby. So I didn't really have any choice or say in the matter. And then that kind of becomes the filter. So why didn't that person want to date me? Because I'm not enough. Why didn't I do good in school? Because I'm not smart enough. Why didn't I blank? Because I'm not enough. And that just becomes this thing that we unfortunately constantly enforce through our behavior. And then eventually you wake up one day and say, wait, why am I not enough though? Again? And then it becomes the process of unconditioning that. So I think that's why it's so hard, Aaron, because I had a quarter life crisis. This all happened to me at 26, 27. But if it's 47 or 57 or 67, you just have a lot more experience to uncondition, right? So it's understandably, I think, why it gets harder as you age.
Yeah, potentially. And I think you just kind of, unfortunately, people accept it a little bit more, don't they? As they get older, I think they just settle into it and just like, it is what it is now. And
yeah,
this is my life, which is sad really for people who, who could potentially live a bit more, at least like they want to live. And that, I've lost the word in for it now. My mind scrambles since I had the operation. I'm just a bit fuzzy headed, but
no worries.
The
necessity?
No. But what you think about yourself? That my head's gone.
No, you're good. You're good.
Do you know your opinion of yourself and your self-talk and all that kind of stuff?
Like self-esteem?
Self-esteem, that's the one. Okay, sorry, I'm being an idiot today. Sorry, I'm just fuzzy-headed.
No, you're good.
Yeah, so that self-esteem piece, when you've got low self-esteem, that is a real difficult gutter to crawl out of. I've been there myself. It's really, really difficult when you're in that place because you're constantly on yourself about any little thing, and then any little bit of negative evidence just reinforces that.
Yeah.
How did you manage that battle? Are you still battling it?
Man. So now my understanding or my perspective is self-esteem is self-worth. And that's the amount you are capable of valuing yourself, I guess, for lack of better phrasing. That started to change when I started setting boundaries. So I think one of the reasons, and again, I'm not a therapist, so a lot of what I say, well, everything I say, please filter it through your own filter. But I think one of the reasons that a lot of people deal with low self-worth is because they're raised in households where they're unable to maintain boundaries because their parents are overbearing. Unfortunately, you tend to attract those types of people in your life because you don't have the boundaries to filter them out. And then later in life, you find that you really struggle with boundaries and you're abandoning yourself for someone else, which means you're quite literally saying you are worth more than I am to me. That wasn't really my experience, especially the childhood thing. But I noticed that when I started setting boundaries and saying, look, I'm going to do something. Here's why I'm going to do it. And I actually stood for that. That really helped a ton. And then another thing is when I really started investing in myself. The analogy I always use is if you have a car with 4 flat tires, you're probably not going to put a new paint job on it. It doesn't really make sense. You got to fix the tires first. So I tried to invest in me so I would actually feel internally, intrinsically valuable by learning and evolving and growing in books and TED Talks and that type of stuff. So I think the biggest two for me were investing in myself and setting boundaries. And then the third one was I tried to set and keep small promises. When you let yourself down every day, my business partner has a really good quote that I can't take credit for because he came up with it. But he said, if you had a friend who broke as many promises to you as you have broken to yourself, how much would you value that friendship? You wouldn't. And I think that's one of the reasons we don't value our relationship with ourselves.
Yeah, that's actually quite brilliant, isn't it?
He's very intelligent, Aaron. He's very smart.
Yeah, seems it. Very, very intelligent. Because that, honestly, the amount of promises I break with myself, I have done over the years, I don't even want to think about it. But yeah, it's a tough journey. And you said you invested in yourself. What? And you said you did TED Talks, stuff like that. What else did you do? What kind of things have you focused on to try and, really build yourself up and get to where you are today, really?
Yeah, lots of coaching. That's probably, so my business partner has been coaching me since we partnered up in 2018. So I've been getting free coaching, even though we're business partners. I paid for it in maybe not financial ways, but other ways. That was a big one. Just having the conversation with yourself that I am going to intentionally try to learn more and grow more and be more because I believe I am worthy of that. That right there, that process for me was, I never felt like somebody who was valuable. I remember one of my friends had kids young when we were in our early 20s. And I remember thinking to myself, if I was ever around them and something was going to happen to him or me, I would want to be the one to take the bullet because he's more valuable than I am. He has more to live for than I do. He has more responsibility. He has more impact. Maybe that's like a noble thing to want, but it was because I didn't value myself at all. I just, whatever, let them take me, let them beat on me, whatever it is. So yeah, coaching was a really big one because somebody quite literally is trying their hardest to pour into your life and then help you work through the stuff that you've convinced yourself that's normal that isn't. That was a really big one. And I mean, even just the act of buying books. I didn't understand the importance of books. It didn't make any sense to me. What am I going to learn from this book? I just didn't get it. So I guess a big piece of it is when your identity is, I am not smart, I am not someone who learns, I am not someone who grows, and then you start buying books and you have coaches and your identity starts to shift, everything kind of starts to shift as well. So that was a big piece of it too.
Yeah. What kind of books do you read? Are you talking nonfiction or is it
self-help?
Like all the stuff, yeah.
Yeah, one of the first books I ever read was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And Then I read Mindset by Carol Dweck, which highlighted to me that I had a very fixed mindset and I didn't even know what a growth mindset was. And that became a journey. And there was just a lot of that stuff, mostly internal. I want to understand myself at a deeper level books.
Yeah, I like that. To be honest, I read a lot of those myself. And I do read some that are not quite self-help, but they're almost along the same lines, like Jocko Willink's books and Jordan Peterson's and stuff like that. Just stuff that really just get you thinking about yourself and about the world, and just I can't do nonfiction. I can't do fiction, sorry. But I can do nonfiction. I can get right into it, and it changes like how I think and things I look at for at least a short term, which opens up other doors for me. But mental health is a big one. I've dealt with a lot of mental health stuff in like previous roles and stuff like that. What's your experience of it? So obviously there's a lot of statistics about men, especially young men, taking their lives and getting to that point and struggling to open up. And obviously you've had the courage to do that, to go to therapy, to get coaching and to really focus on yourself. What would you how would you encourage people out there who are really struggling with that, opening that door to get to that point?
Yeah, two things I usually say. One, by definition, if you are scared to do something and then you do it, it does not make you weak, it makes you strong. So anybody that says seeking out help for mental health is weak, it's hard to do, it makes it strong. It means it's strong if you're doing it. That's one thing. The second thing that it's really hard because if you're really, really, really struggling, it's hard to hear anything. So what I always try to say is, if let's say you are someone who has potentially a history of mental health struggles, whatever that means to you, right? It's personal to everybody. It benefited me to work on being vulnerable with people when I was doing really well. So if we're relying on building the umbrella during a thunderstorm, we're going to get really wet. But if we can focus on building the umbrella when times are good, when it's sunny out, when it's bright out, when it's warm out, then when the storm does come, you feel safer reaching out to someone. So that's something that really, really, really helped me. And I don't know. I never knew, or I never thought I had any sort of mental health stuff going on. I remember I dated someone in high school, and I remember asking, I said, what is it? What do you mean you're depressed? Like, you're just sad? What is it? I don't understand. Like, what does counseling do? What does therapy do? And then later in life, when I was like 25 maybe, I remember I was home from work one day, and I was playing Call of Duty, just hanging out. And I had this moment, Aaron, where I literally thought to myself, if this is what life is, and this is as exciting as it ever gets, I don't want to do it anymore. If it's gray, if it's boring, if it's just bland like this, I don't think I want to be here. I don't want to do this. When my girlfriend got home that day, I told her that. And she said, well, I really think you should go to therapy. And I said, no, I'm fine. We're good. I'm jacked. I have tattoos. I got money. I'm good. I don't need any of that. No. I just wanted to tell you. And eventually she kind of knocked down the walls. And I remember the first time I ever went to therapy, it was in downtown Boston. So I had to parallel park, and it was a whole thing. I was not prepared for that. And it was in this old building with this spiral staircase that you had to walk up. And I remember walking up these creaky steps, and I had two thoughts. One, this person that I don't know is going to judge me a ton. Two, I'm going to cry. Those were my two thoughts, my big fears. And I remember the therapist was wonderful. It was a wonderful young lady, and I bawled my eyes out several times. And I remember leaving there excited to go back again the next time. And that was proof to me that, okay, yes, this was scary. Yeah, it was uncomfortable, but I was so excited to learn about me. And that's what therapy did. It highlighted things that I just didn't understand, which then highlighted more things that I didn't understand. And it gave me some opportunity to change that. So my mental health stuff was, I didn't understand that I had anything going on. until I had that time of, I don't really know if I want to be here. Went to therapy, felt good. It worked so well, I stopped going. Is kind of always the joke I make. And then a couple years later, I was having suicidal ideations where, again, it was worse this time. It was, I don't want to be here. Because if I was to leave, I would take all my problems with me. I would take all my uncertainties with me. And then I ended up going back to therapy. I ended up leaving my job. And then I ended up pursuing my passion full time. And honestly, that was a really big thing for me. When I left my job, my depression pretty much went away. I know not everybody has the opportunity, the privilege, or the circumstances to do that. So I'm not saying that's the answer. But for me, that was a huge thing. It was night and day. And I can count on one hand how many times I've had depressive thoughts since then. It hasn't been a lot. So it speaks to maybe how misaligned what I was doing was at the time.
Yeah, I think finding a purpose is massive for people. If finding the right thing, the right fit for you and for who you are, and then you can just live authentically then and be yourself, and then that just brings, it just brings a peace with it, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's about more than me now. It's like, it's not just me. There's more to this. I'm not doing everything just for me. It's bigger. It's because I was going to ask you the same question. What is the point of all the growth? Why are you reading books and why are you growing? You're not doing it because you woke up one day and were like, that's good, I'll do that now. I'm guessing something happened in life and it became enough of a necessity, right?
Yeah, it's motivations, isn't there? So I've been through a lot of stuff as well. I've had battles with mental health and everything else as well. Not to your extent, I don't think. So I don't want to play mine up as if I've had some sort of terrible. I had a great childhood. I've been very fortunate throughout my life, really, but I still had moments that were traumatic for me and things that have happened that have been difficult for me to overcome mentally. And that's kind of pushed me to want to grow. And some of it is my own failings as well, where I'm disappointed with myself and low self-esteem and stuff like that. And it's really pushed me to try and find the answers and to keep moving forward and to try and get to a point where I'm at peace and I'm happy with life and I'm actually trying to enjoy life. So, and that's part of this podcast as well. To be honest, that's me. Something I can do. There's authentically me. I can put myself out there, and I don't care what people think anymore. I used to. I wouldn't have done this 5-10 years ago because I would have been too conscious and too worried about what everybody else thought. But now I really don't care. Not bothered. This is for me. So if they don't like it, that's fine. Don't watch it. Don't listen to it.
Yeah, it's not for them. It's not for them. I think it's amazing because I think having deep conversations like this, if you've ever gotten negative feedback or somebody who leaves a negative comment, my try for a reframe, I'm not always able to do it, but I feel bad that they're probably not super fulfilled. Doesn't everybody want to live their dreams? And when you see somebody living their dreams and you're not, it can be very hard. I understand. I don't know if I would like, if 5, 10, 15 year ago version would like this version of Kev. Because I think this version of Kev, unfortunately, highlights a lot of the stuff that version of Kev didn't like. So I try to have empathy, but again, easier said than done. I don't know if I'm that transcendent yet, Aaron.
I think it's difficult for me to understand, though, because, there's so much out there, entertainment-wise and, learning-wise, whatever you want. Like, if you don't like something, just move on. That's what I do. If I'm not particularly enjoying something, all right, I'll give it a try. If that's not for me, I'll move on. I'm not there then commenting and trying to knock people down. I don't understand what people get out of that, to be honest. But
yeah, I think they get significance.
Maybe they try to knock people down to raise themselves up. Maybe, but it's a weird one to me. I've never understood it, but there's plenty of them out there, I suppose. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I understand what it's like to look at someone and want to villainize them. I never went out of my way to villainize or leave comments, but I did have must be nice syndrome for sure, where I would say, oh, it must be nice to have this, must be nice to have that. I had that for sure. I never went the extra step. But
Yeah, I think
you
that's
know,
normal. I think everybody has that, that it's envy, really. You look
yeah,
at people and you just think, oh, because you want to be in that position or to be able to be in that position. So I think to cover your shortcomings, you put these things in place. Or they must have had it easy. They must have had handouts. They must have had this, that, and the other that has made it easy for them. So they are lucky, not they've done it through hard work, or they've done it because they fixed the problems that you're refusing to look at or to deal with.
yeah.
And it kind of puts a mask over your own problems, and then just puts, oh, they're just lucky, they're just fortunate, they've just got this, that, and the other, and I never had that.
Yeah, justifications.
Yeah, I think we're all kind of guilty of it to a degree. I just think it's a bit much when people are going on the attack. But
I agree. I hate it. I'm not a fan. I don't like it. It makes me sad, and I like being liked. I do. I enjoy when people
yeah,
like me. I don't like when people don't like me. It sucks.
yeah, it must be a tough one if that's your kind of mind. I think everybody does like when people like them, but especially if you like. If you, I could tell by your energy that you really care if people like you.
I do too much.
And that must be difficult when people are then attack, especially if you can't reason with people or have conversations with people to kind of hit the bottom of it.
Well, the thing is, I don't know what to say back. Because I don't want to. That's like the hardest thing is, and again, all things considered, I have gotten very little negative feedback. So I'm nitpicking here. I'm blessed where I haven't got a lot of negative feedback. But the last thing I want to do is like take time out of my day to comment on them taking time out of their day. But there's a piece of me that sometimes I just want to message them and say, hey, just so you know, if you were trying to hurt me with what you said, it kind of worked, and that sucks. There's a piece of me that just wants to say, like, human to human, I don't get it. I don't know why you're doing what you're doing, but it kind of wrecked my day, if I'm being honest. And maybe it shouldn't. Maybe I'm overthinking it. I don't know. But sometimes that's the truth. I just don't know what to say back. I guess you don't say anything back, but then you feel unexpressed. It's a weird thing.
Yeah, it's a tough one to get right,
Yeah.
isn't it? I think. I mean, yeah. Personally, I'd just ignore it, but just.
Do you find that you have a lot of self-belief? You feel like you have high self-belief? No.
Oh no, I'm the opposite. I'm very. I just expect everything's going to fail.
Interesting.
I'm in that, but that can be freeing sometimes. It depends on the context, but that can actually be quite freeing sometimes, because I'm like, so like with this podcast, I don't expect a lot of views. I'm not expecting this, that, and the other. It's just I'm just doing it because I enjoy doing it, and hopefully it'll reach people who enjoy it, and it'll grow and it'll reach more people that enjoy it, etc. But I have this mindset where it won't succeed.
Interesting.
I think UK versus US mindsets are very, very different. So in the UK, everybody's pretty, you'll never do that, you'll never achieve this, you'll never do that. Whereas as American mindset, from my perception anyway, over this side of the water, it's the American perception is like, our American belief is like, yeah, you can do it, anyone can do it, anyone can go and achieve stuff. Whereas in the UK, it's the opposite of that. They try to keep the status quo and keep everybody, they like people where they are.
Interesting. I see. I would never know that. I've heard that. I've heard that from people, and I've visited. Very much that way. Yeah, it's very interesting.
People don't like it in the UK if you're stepping out your lane or if you start making moves up the ladder. That nobody likes that. It's a weird cultural thing. I don't know where it stems from, but yeah.
See, I would never guess that you didn't have high self-belief.
No. I'm pretty good at masking things, to be honest. I think that's probably my biggest skill. is masking all the doubt and the issues that are behind the mask.
Yeah.
But no, I've never really had self-belief. I've always struggled with that part of it and that self-esteem piece, and I've always really worked really. I have to work really hard really to keep pushing myself forward, because otherwise, if I let I don't want to say voices in my head because that makes me sound like something else, but that negative self-talk, and I just need to keep on top of that all the time because it's constant.
I resonate. I do. Same. I don't have, I'm telling you, I think people would probably look and say, well, you're on podcasts all the time and you're on camera all the time. You must have high self-belief. You're just seeing zoomed in version of something that I've done 3,000 times. You're just seeing me in this one arena. And it's been very similar where I constantly have to force myself to do things that scare me. Always. It's like kind of that if I could add any value to any human, that's like the thing. Is the only reason I have a lot of results that I didn't think I would get is because I've done so many things that I didn't think I would do because they scared me. And I just did them enough.
Yeah, keep pushing forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. So obviously you've said you're in that same boat as me with that kind of mindset a bit. What are your kind of coping mechanisms other than sort of doing stuff? Is it, because you said you only had a handful of down days, but how do you cope when you do have a down day? Is it like things that you do, or is it just?
Yeah. I mean, I'm having
particular?
a down week, kind of. Last week was rough. I don't know. I still haven't figured out why. I'm searching for it, but I can't figure out why necessarily. Usually what I do is I tend to reflect. So one of the benefits of being a podcaster is I have a bunch of content I can look at and look back and say, oh, 5 years ago, you thought you were really struggling, or you thought you were doing really well and you were really struggling, whatever. And it gives me a lot of perspective because I didn't think I was going to be where I am today 5 years ago. So it gives me a lot of inspiration. It gives me a lot of hope. It grounds me and reminds me of how much has changed in such a short period of time, and also how much has stayed the same in such a long period of time. It's kind of a paradox. That's always something I do. And then if I'm like really struggling, which again, it doesn't happen often, I just kind of go back to the basics. What is the minimum that I can do to just make a little bit of progress today? What does that look like? Is it I only do 2 podcasts instead of 5? Is that it? Okay, cool. I just make sure that I'm hitting the bare minimum and I'm not losing momentum. That's kind of it, because some days it's not good for your mental health to push through. Some days you need to take a break and you need to take a breath. And I know there's the hustle culture and the hustle porn of grind and this, and I grind a lot, for sure. I work a lot. I work a lot of hours. But I'm not saying that's been great for my mental health. Sometimes I think it's been bad for my mental health, honestly.
Yeah, and especially the people who are grinding and doing jobs that they hate. That's the worst one for me. If you hate your job, and you're stuck in a career where you really don't enjoy it, and you're doing a lot of hours and it's taking a lot out of you, I think that's even worse. And you feel more and more stuck, and you get lower and lower. I suppose from your perspective, you have at least some joy from what you do because you enjoy what you do. And I'm not saying it's not difficult, and obviously you work hard and you put a lot of hours in, but I think it maybe takes a little bit the edge off knowing that it's what you want to do,
of course,
and you get some enjoyment throughout the week, etc.
Yeah.
Just circling back to saying, obviously you're having a rough week, etc., and you don't know what's the cause of it. Do you have that often where you don't really know what's triggered it?
Less than ever, right? Less than ever. No, it doesn't. That doesn't happen often. It's usually like it's either I feel scarce financially, even if the number in the bank isn't. If I feel it locks me up. I get constricted. If what I think it is right now is I went to a podcast festival last week. So there's a podcast festival called Podcast Movement. And it's I think it might be the biggest podcast festival in the world. And I went to this event and I was super excited. And when I started having conversations with people, I think for the first time, I was nervous to share what I am so proud that I've helped create. Because I'm used to being the underdog who's not going to be successful. And people kind of like underdogs. They root for you. You could say whatever you want. People are like, good for you. That's awesome. Like, nobody expected you to make it here. Good for you. But I would find that when I would be talking to someone about their show and their business and what they do, and then when I would start talking about what I do, the energy would shift and it made me feel bad. I felt like I was being arrogant, and I felt like me sharing what I have done wouldn't be constructive, and I felt like I had to filter myself. And I'm so used to being on the other end where I have to like hype myself up to just exist. And now I'm like being depressed on purpose almost. So it messed with me. And here I am. I'm in Washington, D.C. in a beautiful Airbnb. And where I stayed, it was like wonderful. And I went downtown. It was beautiful. But then I'd go back to the Airbnb and I would just be sad. And I just like wanted to cry. So I think it's because I was not able to express how proud I truly was in fear of triggering other people.
Yeah. Do you think that would have happened? Do you think it would have triggered people? Is it like from a jealousy point of view, an envy thing, is it?
No, I don't know. I think there's a piece of me that just doesn't want to seem arrogant. Like, that's one of my fears, is just because arrogance triggers me so badly. Like, one of the things you and I feel like we're going to get along wonderful. You're not arrogant. You're humble. You're authentic. You're curious. You just seem like a really good human. So I wouldn't get triggered by someone like you. But I don't want to be that to someone else. I think that's a big piece of it.
Yeah, I understand. I don't think you'd come across that way, to be honest, especially if you framed your story in the way, that to cover all where you've come from to where you are now. I think if anything, it'd probably inspire people really to think that, well, maybe I can do it as well.
Yeah.
I think it's maybe getting it framed correctly for yourself, not necessarily for them, but for yourself, where you feel I'm given enough to explain and be proud without, shoving it down your throat that I'm doing well, sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for most of my life, I've been afraid of failure. I think in moments like that, I fear success more, which is a weird. Aaron, I thought everybody was doing this to be successful. I thought that's why we chased our dreams, to be successful. And then I realized my business partner is afraid of success, because every time he grew and every time he got another award and made more money, he got villainized more. And I think I was a little bit afraid of that for like the first time ever. That fear came up for me, which is just something I didn't know how to deal with yet.
So, well, that's the thing. If it's something new, it's going to be really difficult and probably take some time to get grips with it.
Yeah.
But I think that's good, and it shows your character really, that you're in that place, not that you just, because some people will just get carried away with it and be like, yeah, I'm great, and have this new arrogance and walk around and be like, I'm better than everybody else, whereas you're really conscious about how you come across and how you impact other people. So I think
I appreciate
I don't think you'll ever get to that point where you're coming across as arrogant, because you're too thoughtful for it, to be honest.
I appreciate it. I have in the past. There's been moments, for sure. I've had moments in the past where I always say that new confidence can be a weapon that you don't know how to handle yet. It's like a gun that you're shooting it all over the place and you don't know what you're doing with it. I've had moments and minutes of that for sure in the past. So it's definitely, I know what it looks like. I can tell the words. I can tell the energy, but I appreciate it. That's the thing about stuff like this, is I don't know what the answer is yet. And I'm just weird enough to just tell you and just share it publicly. Like, this is kind of what I'm going through. I don't know what it means yet. This is my experience. But that's how growth happens. If you said, I'll give you $1 million if you can give me the answer of why you felt that way, I'd say, no, I can't. I just don't have the answer yet. I don't. But there's a lot that comes out of the exploration. Way more than the answer. There's a lot that comes out of the exploration. I know way more about myself than I ever have. I will never know everything about myself. It just doesn't work that way. It's a never-ending game.
Yeah, and just when you think you've got yourself figured out, you're evolving anyway, because stuff is happening and changing, and you're
Yep.
evolving throughout life anyway. So
Yeah.
we never find that point, do we?
That's right. Right. Never. It won't. It
Gotta
can't
keep-
happen.
No, we got to keep chasing it, though, I suppose.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, yeah, I've not got to that point yet where I have to worry about that, so I'm good. But yeah, I can imagine it's quite a difficult balance, just that dynamic shift. Has it affected any relationships with people like you've known for a long time or anything like that, or is it just sort of new people that you struggle with?
Yeah. I mean, I'm blessed now because the people that are around are kind of like, the ride or dies. Been doing this long enough, 7 years, 6 years full time. But I've lost people that I loved dearly on this journey because their growth and my growth didn't necessarily align. And rather than me delude myself into thinking that them wanting what I want is what's best for them, certain friendships and relationships just kind of died. I had a really, really good friend. I was the best man at his wedding. I held all 3 of his children when they were born, the day they were born in the hospital. We were brothers. And eventually it just got to the point where we just wanted different things in life, and I didn't give enough feedback about the way that I was feeling, and the relationship ended up dying, unfortunately. And it's hard because it sounds cold and it sounds callous, but I think about this person all the time. I miss this person dearly. I think about them often. I think about them very often. But it's just the rubber band analogy. When you're growing in one direction and somebody else is growing in another direction, there's really only 3 options. You go to where they're going, they go to where you're going, or the rubber band snaps. And sometimes, unfortunately, what's best is the rubber band snapping. It just sucks. It's just an unfortunate byproduct of misaligned growth. And I've definitely had my bouts of that for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I have experienced that myself with people. So I left where I grew up. So I grew up in Wales, it's a country just off of England, and I joined the military. And I moved around a lot, had a lot of life experience. Went to different places, did loads of new things. Whereas a lot of my friends stayed home, stayed in the same town, doing the same things, same jobs, etc. And you just kind of drift apart. You kind of lose, along the way. And it's not that you want to necessarily, like you say, it's and you do think about it, and you've had some great times with these people, but you just end up being different people and living different lives essentially.
Yeah.
So
well, you start valuing stuff differently. That's when you're young and you can't drive. There's only like so many things you can actually value because there's only so many things you can do. But then as you evolve and you grow and you have access to more things and you have more opportunities, maybe you start valuing things differently. And I think that's really one of the reasons relationships fail is there's just misaligned core beliefs, misaligned core values, or misaligned core aspirations. And it's some people just hang on to those friendships. And I'm not saying you shouldn't, but some people just hang on to those friendships because a little piece of something is better than nothing. And I'm just not, that's just not it for me.
No, the problem I have with it is when I hang on to stuff that's sort of more aligned with past me, it kind of brings me back. I kind of regress. It's like when you go back to see family, you kind of regress a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'm conscious of that, and I'm trying to move forward, not backwards. So that kind of, I've still not figured that one out yet, that battle, and how to get it right, to be honest, because I don't want to be like, I'm just cutting everybody out of my life. But equally, I don't want to be tethered and pulled back. I want to keep moving forward. So it's a difficult balance to get right.
It's not easy. And the only way to get it right is to get it wrong on both ends. You either
I'm good at that.
Same, trust me. But it's less and less. I feel like I revert less than I ever have when I go see people now because I understand that they just don't value what I value, and that's okay. So let me maybe it's going to be a weird couple hours, whatever. I'm okay with that. What do we all value that we can share? Okay, is it family? Is it the fact that it's Christmas? Whatever. but yes, there's no manual for this. There's no manual for growth because everybody's different and everybody's relationship with growth is completely different too. It's a very weird thing.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, relationships are hard at the best time, aren't they, with everybody, and like trying to balance everything out is it's very difficult. Obviously, you're talking a bit about your business partner. How's your relationship with your business partner? Is that a day to day? Do you work together day to day in the building? Yeah.
No, everything's virtual.
Oh, okay.
Everything's virtual. So
how do you find managing that?
At this point, I'm very used to it just because so during the pandemic, we actually got a studio and actually did more stuff in person because everything was cheaper. So it made sense. Like we could get a good deal. And then after that, we just got really busy and it just made sense to just have a home studio and work from home every day. It just made a ton of sense. So we went to middle school together. We went to high school together. And in high school, we didn't really like each other. Okay. He is very confident, Aaron, like the most confident human you will ever meet. I was very insecure, maybe the most insecure person you would have ever met at that point. And we didn't like each other in high school. And then after high school, I went and did my thing. He went to a really good college and got smarter. And then we reconnected a few years after he graduated college. And it seemed like he was living the dream. He left his job. He had like hundreds of thousands of dollars saved up in the bank. He was at the beach every day doing fitness content. And I was like, wait, that's what being an entrepreneur is? Interesting. So we ended up hanging out. We started rebuilding our relationship. He is the complete opposite of me. He is an electrical and computer engineer. I am an emotionally driven man who makes decisions on how I feel. And it's been really good because I've learned a lot about what it takes to be successful. And he's learned a lot about people from me because I just understand people better than he does. So we've gotten the unique benefits of working with each other. But obviously there are also some detriments that come with that too, but we have very similar core values. So it works wonderfully. Again, we work very closely together. There's been a lot of high pressure things, but I can count on maybe 3 times that we've had like real arguments over the last 7 years. So we're doing really well in that.
Yeah, that's pretty good to be fair.
Right?
Yeah, that's quite impressive. So you said he does fitness content. What about yourself? You do any fitness content? Because obviously you could tell you train and
Not as so. Yeah, a little bit. But so I used to be a bodybuilder. I still am, but I don't compete. He was a personal trainer and a fitness model. So when we reconnected, we would just go to the gym for a couple hours every day, and that was like a big part of our brand, and it still is. It's just we got kind of overwhelmed with the other pieces of life, and fitness unfortunately took a back seat to the business and the relationships and the other necessities of life. So now we're really kicking it back into gear. So even the fact that I look like I train, I'll take that. That's a win.
Yeah, I mean, you can always tell when somebody trains. You can't tell that I train right now. I'm a mess right now, but I'll be back in the gym soon, I hope. So
my shirt's much tighter than yours, Aaron. So it helps me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'll use that as an excuse. Yeah. So and obviously at the start of the show, you mentioned your Next Level University podcast, how you started out.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit about that, about what kind of content you covered and.
Yeah, in the beginning, it was. I am not kidding. It was just cool conversations with cool people. I just want to talk about internal stuff. What are your biggest fears? If you could do anything with your life, what would you do? Just that type of stuff. And then eventually we started to understand that what we really value is self-improvement. And then more and more in time, it was, well, I've had money and been very single and lonely. I've been in really good shape physically, but terrible shape mentally. I want to be well-rounded. So we're going to talk about holistic self-improvement. Holistic meaning life, love, health, and wealth. We're going to talk about all those things because we've kind of had Alan has a very similar story. He was very successful financially, but extremely unfulfilled. He's been in terrible relationships, but really good shape. We've had very similar stories. So our thought was, well, if I want to have the most fulfilling life, I think fulfillment is going to come from those things. So that's going to be our brand. That's going to be our mission. That's going to be our message. And then we started to realize that maybe we're weird in the fact that we tend not to live on the polarities. So there are some people watching or listening that would benefit from working more. There are some people watching or listening that would benefit from working less. The truth for you is somewhere in the middle. I don't know exactly where it is, but I think everybody kind of goes on one side or the other, and we try to live somewhere in between. And I think that's kind of what makes us a little bit different. If you want to be a multi-millionaire, you're probably gonna have to work harder than somebody who doesn't. It just kind of is the way the universe is set up. If you want to be in better shape statistically than someone else, you're probably gonna have to put in more effort. That's up to you. And at least knowing that, I think, is hopefully powerful, potentially powerful.
Yeah, I think a lot of people know it and don't want to accept it is the problem.
That's fair.
That's fair. That's the difficulty, is getting that and getting to that place where you appreciate how much do I want this, how much effort am I willing to put in for it, and getting that kind of balance right. Because obviously, for me, so I train. I'm off for the next couple of weeks with recovery from surgery, but I train 3-4 times a week. That's my minimum. That's for my physical health, but that's also for my mental health. So it's the both for me. And I also I train with a friend, so I also socialize. So I try to make it's part of my life. And it really, really helps me that way, doing it that way. I'm not competing for anything in particular anymore. I used to play sport, but I don't anymore. So I find that way works really, really well for me in my life. And it gives me balance with my family life and working and, doing my podcast and everything else. So I think for a lot of people, it's finding that balance of what's right for them. How much effort do they want to put in to get the return? Because at a certain point, there's diminishing returns, isn't there? With training and anything in life, really. So how in shape do you want to be? If you want to be ripped and dedicate yourself to it, that's great. But there's going to be sacrifices elsewhere, realistically.
Yes.
I mean,
yeah.
Especially if you were a bodybuilder, you know better than most, I suppose.
Brutal. It was the worst. There's a reason I don't look like that anymore. It's because it's not sustainable. It's just not. It's very hard to be in that level of shape and have any quality of life. They don't really, especially as a natural athlete. If you're going to use enhancements, it's maybe a little bit easier, but it still sucks. It's still extremely challenging. I, now more than ever, this is my new frame. This is my new understanding. I don't really care what goals somebody wants. I care more about the lifestyle that they're willing to live until they get it. Because I think if I was set up that way, when I did the bodybuilding show, I worked with a coach. And he said, Kev, if you want to win, you will suffer more than anybody else on stage. That's some of the best advice I've ever gotten. Because imagine if he said, this is going to be a walk in the park, and it's going to be the easiest thing you've ever done. I would have quit, for sure. I appreciate the accuracy. And now that's what I try to do when I'm talking to people is I don't necessarily want to be motivational all the time or inspirational all the time. I want to help people see things more accurately. I had a call with somebody today and they said, the reason I set up this call with you is because I want to talk about financial freedom through podcast. And I said, okay, I got to be honest with you, man. You're looking at 5 years minimum. I just want to make sure you understand what you're signing up for because it's going to be harder than anybody else is telling you. I just got to tell you like it is. I would rather them be accurate than work with me. I don't want you to have to suffer if you don't want to suffer, or at least if you don't know what you're suffering for. So that's my new frame is I care about the goal you're setting for sure. I love goals. Goals are amazing. But the reason many of us, I think we've all experienced it in some way, we give up on our goal is not because the goal changed. It's because the process probably is different than we expected, understandably. And so that's kind of where I start now is what process are you willing to live with? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I think everybody wants things really, really quickly without putting any effort in. That's kind of the modern approach, isn't it?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, and everybody's looking for that quick win and looking for these like, oh, the secret to this, the secret to that. How do I get past this? And so many people are just overlooking the fact that actually sometimes these things just take time and effort. And if you condense that time and put loads of time in early, then you might accelerate it. But ultimately, it's going to take time one way or another.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's just about staying in the game, isn't it? Really, learning,
Survive.
progressing, surviving at the start. Just keep evolving, surviving, and moving forward. And and you may never get there, but ultimately, I think that's where you got to choose something you enjoy. So I'm not doing this to make any money or to be like financially free. Anything. I'm doing it for enjoyment. So it doesn't matter to me. I'll be doing this, for as long as I enjoy it, really.
Yeah.
So but I'll be doing it for years to come. But if I was in this to make money, I'd probably be getting frustrated that I'm not making any money now.
Yeah.
And it completely flips your mindset, doesn't
100%. Yeah, you'd be thinking you're doing everything wrong. Like, well, do you enjoy it? Yes. So maybe you're doing everything right. But it just goes to the expectations. Again, I love when people want to make money. Awesome, cool. I love when people don't want to make money. Awesome, cool. As long as that's really all that matters. As long as you know why you're doing it and what's important to you, that's probably the biggest thing. What do you value about what you're doing? That awareness right there is so powerful.
Yeah. How do you, so with your approach, how do you balance them with people to get this message through and to get them to where they want to be? How do you balance that sort of empathy with the tough love, really?
Man, for me, it always goes to, let's talk about what really matters to you and what would you regret more. I had a conversation with someone one time and they said, I want to do what you guys are doing, but bigger. I was like, well, I don't know. I can help you get to where we are. I don't know what bigger means. Like that's something we'll have to talk about. And I said, well, let's talk about what really matters to you. Do you want to be home every night to get your kids off the bus? Do you want to be at all their sporting events? Do you want to be at their recitals? Do you want to be at their parent-teacher conferences? Are you willing to do this over that? Yes or no? Because you're going to have to sometimes. I'm just telling you like it is. You're going to have to sometimes, especially in the beginning. And they said, no, I don't want to do that. Then this isn't for you. At least not the way I've done it. So the hard love for me is always from a place of genuine, I want what's best for you. I don't want what's best for me for you. That's not constructive. Just like what's best for you for me is not necessarily constructive. So it's always been that. I won't even say it's always been that, because in the beginning, I thought everybody was supposed to have massive goals and dreams. And I thought everybody was supposed to try to do the biggest thing possible to change the world in their own way. Now I think you should do what's most productive for you as a human. And it's just different now. I don't think most people should do things the way I do them. I don't think it's healthy for most people. So yeah, it's really that. It's about, let's talk about what do you really want and how do you want to exist as a human being versus why do you think you want what you want? What is it about my life that you think you want? What is it? Is it the significance? What is it? Because there's other ways you can get that and also get your needs met in the process. So yeah, I think that's probably the best I can give is it's contextual to the person, and certain truths might be considered tough love to somebody else it's just common sense, common knowledge, or something that just doesn't affect them at all.
Yeah, I think that transparency is important about what the journey actually is and what it looks like, and rather than being fixated on, oh yeah, I just want this, the end product.
Yeah.
Because if you're not willing to go through it, then it's pointless, isn't it?
Well, this is the thing that a lot of people don't talk about. There's a drastic difference between getting the goal and then maintaining the goal. Maintaining the goal is harder than getting the goal. It's, again, we can use the bodybuilding analogy. Getting ready for a show is really hard. You can't stay that way. Once the show is done, you eat more food and you stop starving yourself, essentially. Creating a successful podcast is really hard. Maintaining it is harder. because there's way more opportunity for failure. You have a team and you have payroll and there's other things that are going on. There's a drastic difference between accomplishing and sustaining. And nobody really talks about the sustaining. They just talk about, this is how I accomplished it. How are you sustaining it, though? Because that's the rest of life after you quote unquote accomplish it.
Yeah, and it becomes a different beast, and it completely depends on the journey, I suppose. But if you start like myself, it's just me doing shows by myself to my own calendar, not having to worry about anybody else. But then you start introducing a team, and then you're managing people,
Mhm.
and there's just all these managing finances. There's all these extra layers, and it can quickly turn into something that you hadn't planned for, you're not prepared for, and maybe something you don't want.
It definitely can. Yeah, I mean, for me, it is something I want, but I was not ready for it, and I was not prepared for it. You're preaching to the choir on that. I didn't know this was going to happen the way it happened. I had no idea. That's why, I try to show up super happy and energetic and grateful and authentic, because I do feel oftentimes like I'm playing with house money. This is weird. It's so weird for me that I get to have cool conversations for a living. It's weird, super strange, because I didn't anticipate most of this. And then what'll happen, Aaron, is people will say, okay, what does the next 5 years look like? I don't know. I didn't know what this 5 years was going to look like. I couldn't tell you what's going to look like in 5. I have no idea. I'll tell you in 5, I guess.
Yeah, I love that. How was it? Did you do any sort of jobs where you had staff previously, or is this like the first time you had staff as well in this role or in this business?
I worked at a gas station when I was young, and I had somebody that worked. I was like the head, so there was somebody that worked under me, for lack of better phrasing. And then I was a foreman at a construction company, and I had people that would work kind of on my crew, but I was terrible at leading people. For sure, I wasn't good, because I wasn't good at leading myself, understandably, right? It's going to be hard to lead someone else. So there have been a couple times where I've been a leader, but not like this. Yeah, this is drastically different, for sure.
And how are you finding it now? Obviously you've been doing it for a number of years now, so
it's hard to be a leader when you're afraid of people not liking you. It's very challenging if that's one of your deep fears, like it is for me. I think there's a lot of amazing benefits. Number one, I mean, our team is amazing, and it's filled with heart-driven humans, who most of which have come through the community, so they listen to the podcast. Wonderful. We have a wonderful, wonderful team. And it's really beneficial to get to know someone, to understand all of the, not all, but a lot of the intricacies of them, because you can therefore lead them more constructively. If I know that you don't have a ton of self-belief, so much of the feedback I give you is going to be just show up tomorrow and try. Not, you misspelled this and this was imperfect and you're the worst. That's not a good way to lead anyone, but especially somebody who is lower when it comes to self-belief. It's been a very interesting perspective to see different human beings and how they react differently to feedback. I've learned so much about people by having an amazing team of people, and I've also learned so much about myself. So it's one of those things where you don't really know what you're going to learn about you until you get thrown into the fire of whatever it is you're doing. So I've learned a lot about me too. It's especially the fear of disappointing people is a big thing for me. I have a big fear of disappointing people, especially when it comes to character. Like I'm very disorganized and I mess up and make mistakes all the time. But when it comes to character, I don't ever want to disappoint someone.
Of that, honestly, there's so many good points in there to pick out. Because obviously, my next question was going to be, has it taught you about yourself? Because I've done leadership roles. I'm in a leadership role at the minute, and managing people is difficult, and it's it's a skill that takes time to learn and to develop and get better. And I've made no end of mistakes, and will continue to make no end of mistakes as I try to get better and be the manager that or the leader that the staff need really to get them through their day. But I think it is important that a lot of these management courses and leadership courses and stuff, they give you this cookie cutter approach, whereas it's so refreshing to hear you say that, not everybody's the same, and, you need to learn who your people are and what they need and how to help them to be the best that they can be.
Yeah.
So, a lot of time for that. I like that you said that.
I appreciate it. Well, I think we're a self-improvement company. So it's for me, if you're not improving and I'm not helping you improve, I'm not doing a great job. I sent a message to someone on the team the other day who I talk to often, but often when I talk, it's about deliverables and measure stuff. It's not about how they're doing. And I just messaged them and said, "How are you doing? I feel like you and I haven't connected humanly as much as we did before. What's going on with you? How are you doing?" And it was a really wonderful conversation. But we always try to lead with vulnerability. I can't tell you how many team calls we've had where there have been tears. It happens almost every time. We have bi-weekly team calls, and there's usually someone's crying, and oftentimes it's me or Alan. It kind of happens because that's what I want the culture to be. I want the culture to be, look, the guys who created this, the founders, are just as vulnerable and just as going through it and just as authentic as everybody else. Because I think when you take people behind the scenes, they're willing to take you behind the scenes. But
yeah,
it takes time to get there, and it takes the right team too. It wouldn't be this way if we didn't have the amazing heart-driven humans that we do. So much of it is on them and their unique capabilities. Unfortunately, they're behind the scenes and nobody gets to see them like I do. And they don't get to be out here expressing. But so much of it is on them. It takes two to tango. And obviously they're at least 50% of that.
Yeah, I think that's key, that vulnerability, that's like, especially from yourself as a leader, to show that actually it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to put yourself out there and to express what's going on with yourself so that, so that you can get the support and so that you can come together as a team. And, if you back each other in the hard times, I think everything's so much better in the good times.
I agree 100%.
But yeah, so looking back on your personal journey, so obviously you've had quite the journey. Is there one thing in particular that you're most proud of?
Ooh. Man. Probably the fact that we've had a lot of opportunities to do some sketchy stuff that we would have regretted, and we never did. It has always been character over everything. If I have to trade in a piece of my character to get to where we're going, we have to decide a different destination. It's not reasonable. It's not sustainable. And I would regret it. So I've made a lot of mistakes, all of them. All of the mistakes. I've made all of them. But very few of which were in the character and going outside of alignment department where I regretted something I did from a character perspective. I would say that's probably the thing that I'd be most proud of. I don't know if it would be super hard to succeed in misaligned ways. I feel like there's a lot of ways to do it. There's a million ways to succeed in misaligned ways. It might even be easier. But we didn't decide to do that. And that's the thing that makes me most proud. And the fact that we have a company that's built on self-improvement. That makes me super proud. Everything is about growth and evolution and evolving and self-awareness and opportunity and all that. And that's a really cool thing to be such a big part of.
That's brilliant. Is that something that you just do naturally, or is that something that do you have like, core values that you speak about as a team, or is that something that is just natural and just you just won't break that character?
Alan and I have a lot of conversations behind the scenes about it, and we've had a lot of. When we started, we were bodybuilding bros who thought we were going to attract an audience of bodybuilding bros. And then pretty quickly we realized, no, we have a lot of emotionally heart-driven women that follow us and that listen to the podcast and that are part of our communities. And it became a responsibility. One of the worst parts of getting to know so many people is you get to know so many people's traumas too. And so many of the traumas came from toxic men. So many of the, and again, I'm speaking blanket statement, but many of our listeners were amazing, heart-driven young women who had been taken advantage of by toxic men. It then became my absolute goal to make sure I was never one of those toxic men. I have a very high responsibility to make sure that everybody in our community is safe from that. And that's a responsibility I hold very, very close to my heart. So that was really the big thing, where it was, okay, nothing wrong with being a bodybuilding bro. I'm not saying anything's wrong with that, but I have to evolve my character as a man, and I want to make sure that everybody in this community is safe. And then when the team started to grow, the team was predominantly heart-driven women. So now behind the scenes, we're surrounded by heart-driven women. This is the training ground that we've been working for to make sure that we're really good men. And if anything, that reinforced the fact that, oh, we were able to attract such amazing humans who want to be on the team. That has to mean something. And it's a conversation that Alan and I have very, very, very often. Yeah. And it's one of the reasons we stopped having guests on the podcast, because we got to the point where some people's characters, and again, we've got amazing guests, and this is not the majority of them, but we had some people who in front of the scenes were amazing, awesome, heart-driven, and behind the scenes, they were not. And I do not want to amplify that person's message or business. So that was one of the reasons we stopped.
Yeah, that's always a worry, and if you get disingenuous people who are just,
yes,
they say what everybody wants to hear, and then the real them comes out.
Yes, unfortunately.
Yeah. It's interesting that you know, obviously attracted that type of listener, essentially, or person that can tie away a message. So obviously, how did that come about? Like getting a lot of people who had been hurt by that toxic masculinity come to the podcast. Was it because of the content you were doing before? Were you already on that kind of path with vulnerability and openness and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think it was a couple things. One, it was two very in shape men talking about feelings, which I think was in 2017, 2018. I think that was more rare than it is today. And as I tried to be as humble as I can, or as I could, I don't know if it came across because I was super insecure, but we were trying to have constructive conversations about the stuff that really mattered. And we tried to do it in constructive ways. So I think it was that. It was really, it's two men that are talking about vulnerable stuff and talking openly about problems, going through breakups, struggling with self-belief, struggling with self-worth. And then I think over time, when I started talking to the audience, I started to realize that it was mostly women. So then we started to lean into that even more, to know that you'll be safe here. And I started literally giving out my phone number, and I would just start talking to people, FaceTiming with people, just to get to know them better so we could add more value. And then I think the other thing was we had low self-worth. Alan and I both had low self-worth. And I think that was a core wound for a lot of the audience that we attracted in the beginning. It was a lot of people that struggled with self-worth, and they struggled with self-belief. And they resonated with the fact that I was talking about it openly, and Alan was kind of the opposite. And they were open to our conversations around it because it was different. It was gentle. It was gently dipping your toe into what is it like to have extreme self-belief, kind of. Test run.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. So obviously that's what you guys are all about, and what message you send. Is that kind of going to be your legacy as well? Is that what you want to be a legacy, or is there more to come? Or
this is always a really tough question, and here's why. I'm very weird with this because my legacy is different to everybody. And after today, Aaron, I may never speak to you again. I hope that is not the case, right? Before today, most of your audience probably had no idea who I was. After today, they may never hear from me again. My legacy is the hour and 30 or hour and 50 or 2 hours that you and I have together. That's it. That's all I'm thinking about in this moment. Is the only legacy I have with Aaron is what I have currently. And that's really how I try to go through life, as heavy as that sounds. The waiter or waitress I have most likely will never see me again. So my goal is to create some level of positive impact, whether it's a large tip or a smile or whatever. That's ultimately what I think my legacy is going to be. And I think, unfortunately, with most people, my legacy will be completely forgotten. So they're thinking about other stuff that's way more important to them than I am. But in the day-to-day, moment to moment, that's kind of how I think.
Yeah, that's really powerful, actually, because it's just brought something to my mind, really, about, the past is already gone, the future's not here yet, so we only really have the moment that we're living in, and life can be taken away from us in an instant. So, making the most of the moments and that time you have with people to, especially the ones you love and the people you're close with, to make their moments special and great. That's pretty big. It's pretty big. And I think, and I don't think stuff like that will be forgotten. I think a lot of people remember, even if it is, the waiter or the waitress that you've given a big tip to, I think, them little moments of joy are the ones that they take home and they think about, and that makes people ultimately build the blocks of happiness. So I think that's really powerful. I like that.
I appreciate it.
I like that a lot.
I don't think it takes a lot to make someone's day.
I think we just take things for granted. I think that's the problem, and we just don't think, and we just so wrapped up in our own little worlds. We don't think about the little things you could do to make other people's day just so much better.
Well, I think I take stuff. You said you had your appendix out, right?
Yeah, on Monday.
Do you know the last time I said I was grateful for my appendix? Never once have I ever said that. I take that for granted every day. Every day I take something for granted. So it's not, trust me, again, I will make more mistakes than most people, I guess, probably. I definitely made more mistakes than I ever expected to. But I think it just depends on what the focus is. Because somebody out there who says their legacy is to make as many people laugh as humanly possible, instead of maybe leaving a tip or trying to make a smile, they're trying to make a laugh. And that's how they go through their life. But I always really respected and looked up to people that made other people feel good. So that's why it resonates with me, and that's why I want to do it. And I also think it fits in with the way I want to live my life. I know I can do it. I know it's sustainable. I know that if I go to a restaurant and that's one of my thoughts, I know I can do that. It's not that hard to do. Even if you're having a bad day, it's not that hard to do. It takes 5 seconds, and I am committed to that. So.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like that a lot. And, it's about that positive energy and bringing that positive energy to people. I try to stay positive all the time, no matter what's going on with my life. Even when it's difficult, I don't get it right all the time. Don't get me wrong. I'm not some sort of superhero or anything daft like that. But I do my best, and I'd say probably a good 80% of the time I'm positive about stuff. So and I try to to be positive about other people, about their lives, and to bring them on. But it does make a difference to people. Of course. And I think if with your energy and the way that you are as well, I think if you're bringing that to people, I think you will get remembered for the joy that you bring to people and for the messages that you bring to them.
Well, I appreciate it. I'll message you 2 years from today, and I'll see if you remember me.
I'll be like, who is this?
Right? Who's this guy?
I'm sure I won't. One of the questions I kind of layered into most of my podcast now is going back. If you could go back in time and tell your younger self one thing, what would it be?
Ooh, it's not your fault. Yeah, it's not your fault. Especially when I was young. It's not your fault your dad left. It's not your fault you're broke. It's not your fault. You have very little control over the situation. That would be probably the thing that would help me the most. And then I don't know if it ever would have resonated with me, but the adversity you're going through right now eventually could become your advantage. I can't guarantee it will, but it might. The pain you're going through right now might eventually become your purpose. You don't know. It might not. But I think that would help me too, because I think for most of my life, I felt really lost. And I felt really directionless, and I felt really misguided and just unguided. And I never thought I was going to amount to anything. Ever, 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 ever. I just couldn't imagine a life where I had any contribution towards anything wonderful. So maybe another little one would be, Kev, just focus on growing a little bit. Just a little bit. Because a page a day is a book a year. And that adds up. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to happen every night. Probably all of those. Would I have listened to any of those, Aaron? I don't know. I
think that's the thing, because I think, to get where you are now, arguably, maybe you had to go through what you went through.
It's fair.
I think a lot of people who are successful or who get to places, like beyond where they thought they ever would, is because they've had some form of trauma or some sort of difficulty that they've had to overcome. And that's kind of built with time, built kind of that confidence, that character, and that strength to get where you are now. I
never would have left my job if it wasn't so bad. I wouldn't be doing this if my job wasn't as bad as it. I mean, again, it's not that my job was terrible. It was just I was struggling with it. I never would have done that. Would I be so focused on serving a female audience if I wasn't raised by my mom and my grandmother? I don't know. If I had a dad around, would it be different? Yes, I just don't know in what way. So I agree. It's just, I don't know what the differentiator is between somebody who has massive adversity and then it becomes something so hard that unfortunately, I don't want to say runs their life, but influences their life so much. And then somebody who has a lot of adversity that eventually is able to make it their advantage. I don't know what the differentiator, maybe self-belief. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a tough one, actually. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it can go either way.
And it does.
Yeah.
It does. If you look at a sister and a brother, same upbringing, but the thing is, it's not the same because if they're different ages, it's different. If it's different dynamics, but one goes and does something, and the other one, unfortunately, maybe goes in the opposite direction. And why? I don't know. It's a philosophical question for sure.
Yeah. I think that's a bit too deep for me. I don't think I've got the answers. That just scares me now. But yeah, is there anything else? Have you got anything coming up that you want to tell us about, Kevin, or anything that?
Do I have anything coming up? I don't even know what month it is, Aaron. We have a charity. We have a foundation called Next Level Hope Foundation for children of single parents. And we rent out the YMCA that's local to one of the cities around where we grew up. And we have an event. So we do one around the holiday time. So it'll be sometime in December. And then we do one around Father's Day. Because it started, Alan and I used to spend every Father's Day together. We would go fishing because his father passed away in a car accident when he was 2. I didn't know my dad. So we would just spend time together because we didn't have anything else to do. And everybody else was having wonderful days with their parents. And we started spending that together. And then eventually we said, look, there's a bunch of kids who have grown up without dads. We should have a foundation. And then we realized, well, there's a lot of kids who have grown up without either parent, or maybe their mom wasn't around. So let's have it for children of single parents. So yeah, that's something that's coming up. I think that's probably the next most relevant thing sometime in December. Do we have a date yet? Probably not. But that is something that we do twice a year, and it is wonderful.
Sounds wonderful, actually. That's quite huge.
Yes. Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Does it get a lot of people come to stay, or is it?
It's still pretty small now. The thing about having a global podcast is it's not like we have a lot of people local.
Yeah.
So that's always one of the interesting things. But we're trying to, at some point, potentially partner up with a children's organization or something. And then I don't know, maybe we'll have a more recurring style thing where it's not just twice a year. Maybe it'll be every month. I don't know. But that's kind of the next step is we're realizing how hard it is to find the amount of humans that we want to help. It's really challenging. So, but there's already foundations and organizations that do. So maybe we can partner up with them.
Yeah, sounds good. Right. Is there anything that you'd like to bring up with me, Kevin, before we
Oh, Aaron, you're
wrap
wonderful.
this up? Or
Just you're wonderful, and I appreciate you, and keep doing it. I'm grateful you're doing something that you enjoy so much. It reminds me of me when I started, for sure, and I think that's wonderful. And if it's fulfilling, it's awesome, and it makes me happy that you enjoy it. So that would be it.
I appreciate that. Obviously, you've got a lot of experience with podcasting, and only got about this much, so we're trying to we're trying to get there. I'm trying to work my way through.
Little by little, my friend. We all start at the same place.
Just trying to make little improvements every time, and try and get better every time. But yeah, it's been a real pleasure having you on, and
likewise,
really,
my friend.
really appreciate it. And I wish you all the best of luck in your future and with your charity and everything else.
Thank you. Right back at you.
Thanks for your time.